Entropy is fundamentally the idea that everything must end. Not in a meteor crashing into Earth way or a humanity is killing the planet way, but instead in a peaceful way. Scientifically speaking, the second law of thermodynamics defines entropy as a measure of the disorder of a system. It also states that the system's entropy can either increase or stay the same, but never decrease. Put simply, this means that a system's level of disorder can only grow over time. This, in turn, means that the total disorder of the entire universe must grow over time. The main way this happens is through loss of heat during energy transfers. Taken over a huge span of time, this results in something called heat death, a state in which the universe will run out of heat energy and reach an equilibrium where nothing happens. This is inevitable. The universe will end someday. But that doesn't necessarily have to be scary. In fact, as the games in this video demonstrate, entropy can be a positive thing. The idea of entropy's inevitability is the subject of a great deal of philosophy. One of the foremost philosophers on the subject is Albert Camus, who pioneered Absurdism. Absurdism is a philosophy that is best defined in Camus' essay The Myth of Sisyphus, in which he claims that the universe is inherently nonsensical and fundamentally uncaring. Camus then likens humanity to King Sisyphus from Greek mythology, doomed by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down again. Our lives, Camus argues, consist of endlessly rolling our own boulders, whatever those may be. This may sound somewhat pessimistic, but Camus puts it in a rather positive light. If we must endlessly struggle, why not find meaning within that struggle? There is joy and comfort to be found in accepting the inevitable whims of the universe. As Camus famously concludes, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. This is a useful framework for discussing entropy. There's no boulder heavier than knowing that everything must end. Outer Wilds is a game that, ideally, you have either played or know nothing about. Seriously, pause the video and go play Outer Wilds right now if you haven't already. It is, at its core, about entropy. This is reflected in both the game's mechanics and its story. First, the mechanics. Outer Wilds is a time loop game. Every 22 real-life minutes, the sun goes supernova and kills the player, and everything else in the solar system. There is no way to outrun it. There's no way to avoid it. You will die every 22 minutes. Accepting this and working around it is the first real obstacle the player faces. You need to strategize and optimize in order to circumvent this. Even when the game is beaten, it is done within the confines of this 22-minute long loop. Entropy is also present in all the ruins and ancient technology on every celestial body you can explore. See, there was an alien race called the Nomai that put everything they had into exploring the universe. Of particular interest to them was a signal older than the universe itself, originating from a point they called the Eye of the Universe. To find the Eye, they went so far as to attempt to force the sun into a premature supernova so that they could harness its power to further their knowledge. They failed, which is why the protagonist is in a time loop in the first place. The sun naturally reaches the end of its lifespan and triggers the time loop with the resulting energy from its supernova. After this failure, the Nomai were wiped out by an anomaly, but their structures and technology remained. The player is constantly reminded of the Nomai, who are defined largely by their absence. You can find text logs, ruined buildings, even fully functional technology, all relics of an alien race that has long since passed. The game's DLC, Echoes of the Eye, features an unnamed alien race that is obsessed with the Eye of the Universe, and with entropy, in an entirely different way. Upon locating the signal emanating from the Eye, these aliens use all their planet's resources to construct a ring world called the Stranger, and chase after the Eye. When they found it, however, they discovered that it had the capability to destroy the universe and immediately blocked the signal. Distraught over the seemingly pointless loss of their homeworld, the strange inhabitants put themselves into a permanent dreamlike state within a simulation of their lost home. One alien, nicknamed the Prisoner in-game, recognized the wrongness of this static world, woke up, and temporarily unblocked the Eye's signal. This is how the Nomai learned of the Eye, and it is also why they were unable to find it afterward. The signal was quickly blocked once again, and the prisoner was locked away. These aliens are terrified of things ending, to such a degree that they put themselves into a Matrix-like simulation to avoid having to confront Entropy. Even the ending of the game is centered around Entropy. The player reaches the Eye of the Universe and brings about the end of the universe, which is about as literal as you can get as far as entropic decay is concerned. This is where Absurdism really comes into play, though. You aren't just catalyzing the end of the universe for the hell of it. Instead, you are confronted with the reality that the universe will end, whether you cause it or not. You have the opportunity, however, to put the dying universe to rest, and birth a new one in its place. You are reunited with the various NPCs you've met on your journey, and usher in the new universe with a beautiful song. With this conclusion, Outer Wilds presents the end of everything not as something to be feared, but something to be accepted. What happens, though, when entropy is not accepted? What are the ramifications of a world that, like the unnamed aliens in Outer Wilds, resists entropy as much as it possibly can? The Dark Souls games might not be your first thought when considering the slow and inexorable death of the universe. Typical discussion of the series centers around its difficulty, or combat. But there's a surprising amount of commentary on entropy to be found beneath the surface. To discuss this, some background is needed. The world of Dark Souls begins with the creation of the First Flame. This is essentially the life force of the world of man, ruled over by a godlike figure called Gwyn. Over millennia, the First Flame began to fade, as flames always must. Gwyn feared the end of his godhood, which was tied to the First Flame, and desperately sought fuel. Having no other options, he used himself as kindling to resist the natural order of things and prolong the Age of Fire. Gwyn is, perhaps unsurprisingly, the final boss of Dark Souls. What is surprising is the presentation of the fight. Throughout the entire game, Gwyn is built up as, essentially, God. He is the Lord of Sunlight, he was this world's creator, he is a force of nature. What you fight at the kiln of the First Flame is no god. Instead, you face Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. A somber piano melody plays, in a game whose soundtrack has consisted of bombastic percussion and brass up to this point. Gwyn is a burnt-up husk of a man who is a complete joke to fight, assuming you know how to parry, at least. Not even God, it seems, can outrun the inevitable. Dark Souls 3 assumes that the player character in Dark Souls 1 chose to offer themselves as kindling to the First Flame and prolong the Age of Fire. This results in a world that really should not exist. The Age of Fire has been going on for eons longer than it was supposed to, and the game's world reflects this. Locations and characters from previous games show up without proper explanation. The game's color palette is muted compared to previous entries. Even the player character themselves is somebody who already failed to link the fire, and is only resurrected because the First Flame is desperate for somebody to sustain it. All of this is especially evident in the game's final DLC, The Ringed City. This DLC takes everything I just mentioned and turns it up to 11. The first area, the Dreg Heap, is a literal hodgepodge of buildings that are only semi-recognizable as belonging to ages gone by. The landscape consists of grey ash and not much else. Even when the player gets to the titular Ringed City, which initially seems vibrant relative to the Dreg Heap, they quickly learn that this is a lie constructed to avoid confronting the inevitability of time's passage. The DLC concludes with the player dispelling this illusion and getting a fast track to the end of the world. Here, all hopes of clinging to the past are shattered. There's nothing but ash and ruins as far as the eye can see, save for one other living person. Slave Knight Gael. Gael could be his own video, but for the purposes of this essay, it is sufficient to note that he is the embodiment of hope in the face of entropy. Gael recognized that the world was dying, with no cure, and chose to give his own life so that a new world might be painted, with his blood as pigment. Notably, entropy is present even within the context of Gael's boss fight. Gael's intro cutscene establishes that he is still clinging on to sanity, but only barely. He is clearly in pain from resisting the natural course of things for so long. No man was meant to live all the way to the end of the world. In his Phase 2 transition cutscene, Gael bleeds and recognizes that it is no longer his blood, but the blood of the Dark Soul. Upon realizing this, he finally lets himself go. He speaks no more and simply fights so that the Ashen One might defeat him and get the pigment to paint a new world. With Gael dead, nothing remains in the world except ash, ruins, and the player. Equilibrium has been reached, and a new world is ready to be birthed. Outer Wilds and Dark Souls both ultimately portray Entropy as an inevitability, but another favorite game of mine begs the question, what if Entropy could truly be avoided? What if things could stay the same forever? Xenoblade Chronicles is, at its core, a series about the future. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 follows Shulk, a boy who eventually creates a new world for himself and his friends, one not controlled by the whims of gods. Xenoblade 2 is primarily about overcoming nihilism and finding meaning in an otherwise hopeless world that is starting to crumble. Xenoblade 3 takes a slightly different approach than its predecessors when dealing with the future, though. In Xenoblade 3, the future never comes. I mean that quite literally. The game's story occurs in a land that is frozen in time just before a massive collision between the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2. Notably, there was a device called Origin that was designed to reset the worlds after they collide with each other, effectively making it as if the collision never happened. However, mass anxiety over the uncertainty of Origin's effectiveness gave rise to the main antagonists of the game, Mobius. Mobius hijacked Origin and froze time just before impact, creating a land called Ionios, meaning without beginning or end in Greek. As their name might imply to those of you who know math, Mobius wants the present, pre-collision world to last forever in a process they refer to as the endless now. And honestly, they have a point. The present is a known quantity, the future is uncertain, and uncertainty is scary. Being able to remain in perfect stillness forever is obviously very appealing. However, the problems with the endless now quickly become apparent. It requires a constant war and constant casualties to sustain itself, resulting in a populace that knows only combat and has lifespans of only 10 years. Even more pressing, there are things called annihilation events that are gradually eating away at Ionios. Over a long period of time, Ionios will cease to exist, no matter how much energy Mobius pours into sustaining it. Like the second law of thermodynamics states, entropy is inevitable, even in the endless now. The protagonists of the game, Noah and Mio, recognize the wrongness of the endless now and put a stop to it, even though this means they will lose each other. Restarting Origin and resuming the Impact event means that they will be recreated in their own worlds without any memory of the game's events. Even in the face of the end of everything they know, Noah and Mio make the conscious decision to move forward and look to the future with hope rather than with dread. Obviously, this does not negate the pain they experience as their worlds drift apart, as Entropy says they must, but it does speak volumes about them that they are willing to endure that pain in the name of a better future. The game closes on a hopeful note, with Noah and Mio affirming that they will be reunited one day, and Noah saying that the most important thing to do in life is to look up, face forward toward your chosen horizon, and just walk on. All three of these games deal with the difficulties of accepting inevitable change. They, much like Albert Camus, emphasize the importance of moving forward, no matter how scary it is to leave the present behind. Entropy is terrifying. There's no denying that. Contemplating the end of all things always is. But it is also beautiful. Knowing that there someday will be an end to it all can give us a sense of meaning. Looking again at the scientific side of things, it is important to note that the second law of thermodynamics states that every interaction can increase the level of entropy in the universe. Every step we take, every song we sing, and every person we love will contribute to entropic decay at some point. There is no getting around that. The universe will die, the fire will fade, the future will come. It is up to us, then, to use this knowledge to build a better world, rather than clinging to the one we currently find ourselves in. By doing so, we can truly embrace entropy.